Any questions? Anyone wants to ask anything? Okay. Let's continue. Whose turn it is today?
Dhanvat Pranam, Raja. Do I summarize last class?
Yes. Summarize all the above shlok.
Okay. Bhagwan is the infinite entity and the one who removes the sorrows of the devotees. Mahaprabhuji teaches all of the devotees who are curious about the Dharma Shastras and the methods of attaining the Purusharths. The first part of this, the first shlok is Mangachan, where Mahaprabhuji remembers Bhagwan. The second part is where it explains the main idea of the verse. Sri Mahaprabhuji wants the Pushti beings to be clear on the main purpose of a Pushti devotee. Ultimately, this verse provides an explanation about the purpose of life and for what the devotee would get in the future of their devotion. For the second Granth, the translation of this shlok is that sages have explained that the four Purusharths are Dham, which is righteousness, Arth, which is wealth, Kam, which are desires, and Moksha, which is liberation. Dharma can be known as our duties to the nation or to our society, family, etc. But the dharma in our four Purusharths, it means the duties that are explained in the scriptures. It has to be followed like this or it won't fulfill the Dharma Purusharth. Next, Arth can be known as a method for attaining more money. For example, we do jobs, but this type of wealth has to be used as explained in the scriptures. Otherwise, this won't complete this Purusharth. Next, Kam are the desires of the human being. It is a natural thing to attain worldly desires and to satisfy our senses. However, if a being chooses the wrong path to get those desires, it is not fulfilling his Purusharth. And lastly, the Moksha Purusharth is the liberation of the soul. This can only be achieved through the ways explained in the scriptures. So a Pushti being has to do all of their actions or fulfill their desires by living according to these scriptures. All of the four Purusharths are intertwined with each other, and if one of them is not completed, it would ruin the other Purusharths as well. The third Granth.
Just one correction.
Yeah.
Not only Pushti Jeev, but each and every Vedic person, has to follow the scriptural ordinances and must live the lifestyle accordingly.
Ji Raja. For the third shlok, Bhagwan has described the ways of attaining all of the Purusharths along with the ultimate results. Learned sages have also described the Purusharths in the Smriti Granth. How to attain the Purusharths have been explained by Bhagwan and sages. Bhagwan had told the sages like Manu, Kasyapa, etc. to write the explanations of the Purusharths again. This happened because the beings were unable to follow the Vedas. Ultimately, Bhagwan felt that it would be necessary for the sages to have written the Smriti Granth and simplified the explanation of the four Purusharths. For the next Granth, since the Alokik Purusharths are in the Ved, Sri Mahaprabhuji believes that it's not necessary to describe the ones that have been explained in the Ved. So, in this shlok, Mahaprabhuji explains the Lokik Moksha Purusharth. Sometimes it is confusing for the people about the ultimate fruit or what type of salvation a being gets. So Mahaprabhuji wants to make it clear that a being not to mix up the fruit one gets after salvation and after attaining the fruit from the devotional path. For the next shlok, there are many methods for attaining salvation. The main four are 1. Salvation by taking refuge, 2. Salvation by one's by one's own self, 3 Samkhya, and 4 Yoga. The last 2 are self-salvation methods. For example, in the Sankhya method, a being has to leave all worldly objects and attachments. This is called sannyas. A being is known to have attained salvation when they first become free from the subtle body and second, become free from the gross body. Most people know this as the most simple way to attain salvation. However, a being can get salvation in by many methods. All of the salvation methods are categorized into 2 parts. First, there's Swata Moksha. This means a being gets salvation on their own without the help of any deity. Parataha Moksha means when a being takes the help of a deity and attains salvation from that. For example, in the Swata Moksha, there is Samkhya and Yoga. In the Samkhya method, a being abandons everything and enters sannyas, and in the Yoga method, he stays in his house and then attains salvation.
Fine. Yes, now you can continue.
Okay. Ahanta mamta nase sarvata nirahan krato sarupasto yada jiva kathatha sa nigadyate. Translation. By following the Samkhya mark, when soul becomes free from I-ness and minus, the soul remains unattached, and after self-realization, it becomes purified and attains salvation. Explanation. A soul becomes bound to avidya as soon as it loses the divine attribute of Anand. Under the effect of Anand attribute, the being attains gross and subtle body and starts developing I-ness and minus towards the body and worldly objects, resulting in forgetting its real form. Samkhya term has developed from the Sanskrit term Samkhya, which literally means to count. By attaining the knowledge regarding constituent elements of the universe, a being realizes that the objective world is perishable, and therefore one has to concentrate upon realizing its real form rather than being attentive towards the worldly objects and outer worldly desires. As a result of this understanding, a person starts developing the emotion of being detached from the worldly objects, relations, and realizes that even his I-ness regarding his body is merely a perishable emotion. Therefore, a person having attained this knowledge would choose the path of sannyas and would concentrate upon his soul and eventually attain salvation, being free from all the worldly bondages. Ultimately, when an individual becomes free from the bondages of both the bodies, the effect of avidya perishes, resulting in the being attaining its original form, Chidansh of Brahm, conscious particle of Brahm. This condition is known as the salvation which can be obtained through the path of Sankhya.
Can you explain this?
After a being loses the attribute of Anand, it's bound to avidya and attains the gross and subtle body. Samkhya term is from the term Samkhya in Sanskrit, which means to count.
No. It is Sankhya.
Sankhya.
Yes, Sankhya term has developed from the original term Sankhya.
Okay. So a being starts developing the emotion from being detached from the worldly objects and relations, and then realizes that his I-ness is just a perishable emotion. And then after this, a being would choose the path of sannyas, which would then and then eventually attain salvation, which is being free from the worldly bondages.
Fine. So here in this slok, Sri Mahaprabhuji explains the process of attaining salvation through Sankhya Marg. For example, if I opt that I want to follow the Sankhya method for attaining salvation, then what is the method and what sort of result will I be attaining? That's what Sri Mahaprabhuji is explaining here. So the process is that a soul becomes bound to avidya as soon as Bhagavan creates it, and as per the Bhagavan's desire, the Anand attribute, the attribute of being unlimited, disappears from that Jivatma, and as a result, the Jivatma, the individual being, attains the worldly bondages, the bondages which are created because of avidya. That's the process which we had understood in Pramaratna Sangra, if all of you may be remembering that there are 5 adhyas which will bound the Jivatma, and ultimately Jivatma will be forgetting its real form. So as a result, the Jivatma, under the effect of Anand attribute, the being attains gross body and subtle body and starts developing I-ness and my-ness towards the worldly and outer worldly objects, and because of which ultimately the Jivatma will forget its real form. Now, what will happen if a person is following the Sankhya Marg? So it explains that Sankhya term has developed from the original term Sankhya. Sankhya means to count. Now what to count? Then scriptures say that we have to count the elements. Which were the elements which have been used in creating this world, and which are the elements which are making this universe, which have been used in making this universe. So if we start attaining the knowledge regarding the elements of this universe, then ultimately we will be able to realize that the body we are living in, the sensory organs which we have developed, the objects behind which we are running, we want to attain such objects, but ultimately all these things are perishable. Even our body, even our sensory organs, even the objects which we have been attaining, or the result which we like to attain, all these things are completely perishable, which don't exist at all. So that's what Sri Mahaprabhuji wants to clear here, that therefore it is very important that a person must understand that how all these things are created, which are the objects which are perishable and which are the objects which are not perishable. So as a result, that person will realize that the soul, the Jivatma, is the only permanent object. Other than that, everything is just perishable. Now when the person will realize that his Jivatma, his individual being, is the only permanent object and everything else is completely perishable, at that moment that being will start being detached from the worldly objects. This doesn't happen all of a sudden. Person has to give time. He has to be continuously in that process, and then ultimately that person will realize that he needs to concentrate upon the soul, the Jivatma, and must not be attentive towards the worldly objects and in fulfilling his worldly desires. So when that individual being will realize this thing, he won't be attentive towards the body, towards the world, towards attaining fruits, but he would completely be attentive towards attaining his original form. He would like to free his soul, free his Jivatma from the bondages of avidya. And as a result, ultimately, the Jivatma will start being free from the bondages of worldly objects. So, to concentrate upon the Jivatma, to perform tapasya, to be continuously thinking upon the same object, about the Jivatma and the soul. All these are the methods which a person will have to follow, and then that person can obtain sannyas and can be free from all the bondages. Now there are many rules and regulations which have been explained in the scriptures for a sannyasi, and the reason is that a person, if he being a sannyasi, he will gradually lose his attachments towards the worldly objects, and then would ultimately attain Bhagavan. Would ultimately attain salvation. So this explains that salvation is the last method to be followed, and as a result of salvation, a being will be free from the bondages of all these worldly and outer worldly objects, desires, even his own body, and will attain salvation. Now, what will be the condition in the salvation? So, Mahaprabhuji explains that as that person is detached from all the worldly objects and worldly emotion, he will be attaining sannyas, and that sannyas will lead her towards finding out the real form and feeling the real form of his soul. So ultimately, that particular being, that particular Jivatma, will start developing the emotions regarding his real form, and then ultimately that Jivatma would attain salvation with the grace of Bhagavan. What will be the condition in the salvation? So Mahaprabhuji explained that he won't be attaining any permanent place. For example, the Pushti beings, after attaining salvation, will go to the divine abode of Bhagavan and will get the chance to serve Bhagavan there. But in Sankhya Marg this doesn't happen, because the follower of the Sankhya Marg is not concentrating upon Bhagavan. He is completely concentrated upon the Pushti being or his own body. Therefore, Pravahi Jiv, the one who is not having much attention, that person after attaining sannyas will leave the house and everything behind and would be concentrating upon Bhagavan. Now, how to concentrate upon Bhagavan? Then the way Bhishma lived, the way Indra lived his life, same way a Pushti being can lead his own life on the basis of that particular lifestyle. So a being would be obtaining the complete knowledge regarding the soul. He would obtain the understanding of his individual being, and then ultimately he would be free from the boundaries of birth and death. Though by following Sankhya and Yoga Marg, a person doesn't obtain a particular place. It means the way Pushtiji will be going to the divine abode of Krishna, this doesn't happen with the people who are following the method of Sankhya, because they have concentrated upon their own soul. They haven't concentrated upon Bhagavan. Therefore, they don't attain any particular place or result after attaining salvation, but they will make their soul free from the bondages of avidya, and then ultimately that being would attain his original form. Now, what will be the original form? Then original form of an individual being is of being a Chidansh. It means the particle of Chaitanya attribute of Bhagavan, and that will be the form the being would be attaining at the end. The individual being would attain Bhagavan, he would be able to understand the form of Bhagavan, and then ultimately, after being free from the bondages, that Jivatma will be attaining Bhagavan, that Jivatma will attain salvation, in which the Jivatma won't get any particular place to survive. That Jivatma will remain in the universe some or the other way, and then would attain salvation as a result of sannyas. Any questions? Anyone would like to ask anything? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I didn't understand what Chidansh is.
Ansha term means particle and Chit term means consciousness. So individual being, it means the Jivatma, is the particle of conscious attribute of Bhagavan. That's what Chidansh means.
Thank you.
For example, the whole ocean and the drop of an ocean. Same way, the Chaitanya of Bhagavan, the conscious attribute of Bhagavan, is unlimited just like an ocean, and the individual being, the Jivatma, is the particle of that Chaitanya, the particle of that consciousness, or that it's like the drop of an ocean.
Ji Raja.
Anyone else? Okay, then we are concluding here. We'll start with the new shlok in the next session.